I would get along with Putin. I've dealt with Russia. I think I would have a great relationship with Russia and with Putin. I would, at the same time, get along very well with Vladimir Putin.
That's Vladimir Putin. Have you ever met the guy?
Tough guy. I met him once. I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night. The biggest thing we have is that we were on 60 Minutes together, and we had fantastic ratings. One of your best rated shows in a long time, so that was good, right? So we were stablemates. I have nothing to do with Putin. I've never spoken to him. I don't know anything about him other than he will respect me. I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. I don't know the gentleman. I don't know Putin. I have no idea. Well, I have no relationship with him other than he called me a genius. He said Donald Trump is a genius. I mean, they want me to refute his statement. How dare you say I'm brilliant? Then Putin said Donald Trump is a genius. He's going to be the next great leader of the United States. Guy calls you a genius. Is anybody going to disavow? We don't disavow. How dare? Who's going to do that?
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect. I don't love. I don't hate. We'll see how it works. Look. They have to do it. They have to get together and get it done.
What'll happen if they don't?
Well, I don't even want to talk about it because I think it would be very bad. I will be very angry about it, and a lot of people will be very upset. But I'm sitting waiting for that bill to come to my desk. I hope that they do it. They've been promising it for
I promise, sir. I promise. I won't get mad.
years.
Does this thing have the momentum it needs?
Well, Poppy, I think what we're about to learn today is whether there is any life.
I think that Crimea should be recognized at Russia at this point.
Well, you know, you have to ask President Obama, because he was the one that let Crimea get away. That was during his administration. And he was the one that let Russia go and spend a lot of money on Crimea because they've spent a lot of money on rebuilding it. I guess they have their submarine port there, etc.
So astonishing about what's happening is the Atlantic Alliance, the alliance of democracies, has withstood all kinds of adversaries.
I have not spoken to Vladimir Putin in quite a while. It has been discussed. We didn't do.
What's your reaction to the president's proposal? Bring in the Russians, let them be part of this G7, G8.
I think it's astonishing, Wolf. I mean, I was there. We, together with our allies, kicked Russia out of the G8 because they'd annexed Crimea and violated the most basic tenet of international order, and worked with Europe over many years to put sanctions on Russia. What we're seeing before our eyes is kind of the unraveling of the post-World War II international order, with the U.S. and our allies at the center of that. And the fact of the matter is that's going to have profound consequences for U.S. security and global security in the years to come. And frankly, it's exactly what Putin would want. When people ask, well, why would Putin interfere in our election to help Donald Trump get elected? A split between the alliance of the world's democracies would be the greatest return on Putin's investment.
Do you think Putin is winning right now?
He's absolutely winning. This is exactly what he wants.
And who do you credit for that win for Putin?
Well, what's so astonishing about what's happening is the Atlantic Alliance, and the fact of the matter is that's going to have profound consequences for U.S. security and global security in the years to come. And frankly, it's exactly what Putin would want. When people ask, well, why would Putin interfere in our election to help Donald Trump get elected? Global security in the years to come. And frankly, the fact of the matter is that's going to have profound consequences for U.S. security and global security in the U.S. and our allies at the center of that. And the fact of the matter is that's going to have allies at the center of that. And the fact
Winning right now.
he's absolutely winning. This is exactly what he wants.
And who do you credit for that win for Putin?
Well, what's so astonishing about what's happening is the Atlantic Alliance, the alliance of democracies, has withstood all kinds of adversaries over the years and decades. It is a
I want to ask you about something that we just heard from Vladimir Putin. He was doing an interview on Austrian television, and this is what he said about his contact with President Trump.
Indeed, Donald Trump and I have met more than once at various international venues, and secondly, we regularly talk over the phone. Our Foreign Affairs Department and Special Services are working fairly well together in areas of mutual interest.
It was interesting. Shifted back and said that he's regularly in contact with President Trump. We know that the two have spoken about, I think, 6 to 8 times. That's our official count that we've been able to track down since President Trump came into the White House. What do you think of Putin stressing that?
Well, Mr. Putin has a game plan, and his game plan is to try to bring down our democratic systems of government, not just in the United States, throughout Europe. I authored a report in January that spelled out the use of his asymmetric arsenal to compromise democratic institutions in Europe and the United States. So what concerns me is that President Trump needs to be very clear of Mr. Putin that we will not tolerate his interference in our government. To this date, President Trump has yet to fully acknowledge Mr. Putin's involvement in the 2016 elections.
I am convinced that Vladimir Putin has a grip on President Trump. And Anderson, when I first learned of the Steele dossier, it just rang true to me because that's how the Russians do things. And before he became a candidate or president, Donald Trump was the perfect target for Russian intelligence. Here's someone who has no self-control, a sense of sexual entitlement, and intermittent financial crises. I mean, that's made to order for seduction by Russian intelligence. And look, I may be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Putin doesn't have a grip on him. But the dossier rings true. I think in the future, we're going to look back on the much maligned Christopher Steele, who took that dossier to the FBI, as something of a hero. And again, I hope I am wrong. But when you look at Trump's behavior patterns, his unwillingness ever to criticize Vladimir Putin, his slow-rolling sanctions, his unwillingness to create problems with Russia, even though as he attacks NATO, disrupts relations with the EU, how can you not draw the conclusions that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is frightened of Vladimir Putin and his grip?
Men slide over in the front seat as he takes the wheel. Putin leads a convoy of orange dump trucks adorned with Russian flags across the brand new Kerch Strait Bridge. The nearly 12-mile-long span connects Russia to Crimea, which once belonged to Ukraine.
Since the time of the Tsars, people were dreaming to build this bridge.
As he dedicates the bridge, Putin's embassy in the U.S. tweets, "Washington is not happy with that, but Crimea is Russia." Not according to the U.S., which has never recognized Putin's 2014 annexation of Crimea and leveled crippling sanctions because of it. Tonight, analysts are drawing a clear line between sanctions against Russia and the 2016 Trump Tower meeting that's attracted so much scrutiny for Donald Trump Jr. If Putin hadn't been chafing at all these sanctions, would that meeting have ever occurred?
No, and it's very likely that without Putin chafing at the sanctions, he wouldn't have tried to get involved in the presidential elections in 2016. That this was a primary bone of contention for him. That meeting, all of the Russian involvement, trying to manipulate our politics, is really an effort to get the United States to back off sanctions.
One set of U.S. sanctions the Russians at that Trump Tower meeting were trying to roll back was the Magnitsky Act, a 2012 American law named after a Russian whistleblower, a law that sanctions individuals close to Putin.
The premise of the Magnitsky Act was that Putin was leading a government that abused human rights, that threw its opponents in jail, that murdered dissidents, that murdered journalists. That was the fundamental underpinning for the passage of the Magnitsky Act. And Putin resented it, and he wanted it abolished.
Putin hasn't been successful in removing those sanctions. In fact, he's even had more sanctions imposed on him. His anger over the sanctions may have motivated Putin to try to create political trouble in Washington. One casualty, fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty to lying to investigators about speaking with the Russian ambassador about sanctions. Tonight, experts warn Putin's got every incentive to keep trying to undermine American politics.
There's an argument that Putin has reached the point of no return, that he has to keep probing, he has to keep seeking influence because he's really outside of the politics of the West at this point.